Welcome to the Geekcentric podcast, and welcome to our watch club for Marvel's Loki. What say you, Loki? Ugh, don't call me that. Call me Randy. What's up, time fugitives, and welcome to Watch Club. My name is Nate, and in this week's episode, we see Loki get a new jacket, engage in a missing persons case, and discover just how the time fugitive keeps slipping through the grasp of the TVA. But first, if you're joining us for the first time, this is Watch Club, our weekly review series, kind of like a book club, but way better. Keep in mind, we will be going into full spoilers for this series and the MCU in general, so if you haven't watched this week's episode yet, be sure to do so, and then come right back in a snap. Now, before we all go to the Renaissance Fair, let me introduce you to two of my favorite time analysts. First up, he's tall, tame, and timely. He's Justin.
Ahoy hoy.
Nice and brief, friend.
Yeah, I like that. That's nice. Quick and dirty.
And next up, sometimes he's ticked, and sometimes he's talked. He's got two hands on his clock, and he's ready to rock. He's Kevin Hudson.
I'm sorry, he has two hands on his what?
On his clock.
Oh,
his clock.
okay. I'm
It's
thanking
a time reference, Justin.
Remember where
the weird part is though that I have one big hand and one small hand. It's very
There you go.
very strict. It's why I can never play sports.
Gee. Okay, all right. Welcome back. Are you guys excited to jump into this next second episode of this series?
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm really excited because we're doing it a week before the episode actually airs. So
It feels cool.
It feels
cool. Yeah.
You know what though? I was thinking though, there's going to be 11 days between seeing this episode and getting to see episode 3.
Yeah,
so now we're suffering like everybody else in a
Yeah,
different
exactly.
way.
I enjoyed, I kind of caught a little bit again as I came down this morning. My dad was watching it and just got to catch the ending. And I got to say, I'm probably going to rewatch the first 2 episodes before
Likewise.
the third one comes out. So
Yeah.
very stoked for that. But you know what? Before we get into the third episode, we still got to talk about this episode. So before we get into the plot and sort of get into our thoughts on what happened, go study through the case files of this episode, if you will, let's start with a brief overview of your, high-level thoughts on the episode. Justin, let's start with you.
Yeah, so I guess last episode we kind of landed on it was a very history lesson, reset of the character, establishing that there's this whole new environment for him to kind of be in and explore with the TVA. And this, like you described it, it's very case file. It felt kind of like 7 minus like horrifying murders that took place, but like it just had that quality of a very 7 detective mystery, film noir, crime sort of esque sort of vibe.
Almost like a CSI. Like you expected, like Loki when they were in the tent to like take his glasses down and then look up and say something epic.
Glasses
So
he wasn't
good.
even wearing. It's like just cuts and he has glasses
Right,
on.
all of a sudden, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But it was cool to see, though, just again, him kind of getting used to this new place that he's in and being a part of it, helping them.
Very cool. Kevin, how about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, when we were doing, even just our preview show, and I know a lot of people's first reactions, it was sort of almost compared to a buddy cop show. And so we did kind of get that vibe here, and it was sort of what I was looking forward to the most from the show was sort of, Mobius and Loki teaming up and starting to really crack into this case. That being said, with things that happened towards the episode, the end of the episode, rather, I think that might be a one and done. I'm really not sure. Obviously, we'll break that down a little bit more as we go through the episode. I really hope that's not the case, but there was certainly a lot to digest here. Lots of, while we moved through the story, we still were learning how things work. I found it a bit more confusing than last week, some of the elements. Maybe you guys will be able to help me as we sort of dissect all of those things. But again, a super solid follow-up. Another great, sort of ending punch note cliffhanger. Like, I can't wait. Like, the show's off and running, and I'm enjoying every second of it.
Yeah, I really hope what you just said, though, in terms of it being potentially a one and done. I really hope that's not the case, just because in these past 2 episodes, like Owen Wilson and Loki, and Tom Hiddleston, he is Loki, have had just the most incredible chemistry on screen. And so, yeah, I hope they don't keep them apart for too long, but we're getting ahead of ourselves there. I got to say, this episode moves things, ahead really nicely, and it has a really good balance of action blended with more expositional dialogue. Like it kind of does a good job of both, whereas maybe the first one was a little bit more exposition heavy. And it still does it where it feels natural and exciting at the same time. And the episode kind of really works to constantly remind us that it's all about Loki until the end. Even Loki kind of reminds us that it's all about Loki. And then we get to the end and you realize just how much bigger of an impact the events of this series can have for the entire MCU. And so I really enjoyed that aspect, kind of that pacing, not just for the episode, but for the series as a whole. I think is really cool that we're already off to the races by the end of this episode.
Yeah, you guys are right on that part. Other than obviously the mystery and crime sort of aspect that the episode kind of added to Loki's character with Mobius, it definitely does set up what will be some very critical events for the MCU.
We're getting into
insane.
We're going to get into it. We'll get into it. I'm so stoked for our predictions. We'll actually get to make this time around. So, guys, let's get right into the plot here. This episode begins in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, which is hard to say, in 1985 at a Renaissance fair, where we see some TVA Minutemen in absolutely the wrong costumes investigate the latest known location of the time fugitive they've been hunting. They enter a dark tent where Hunter C-20 is possessed and then proceeds to start taking out the rest of her crew. After a brutal fight and a kind of an epic song moment, she falls unconscious and then is dragged by the time fugitive through a time door, and we get our title sequence. So, guys, just to kind of get it started. So what do you think of this sort of new way to open the show? I know they kind of did it with Falcon and Winter Soldier, where we kind of got a bit of a cold open. But, they didn't do that in WandaVision, so this is still a little bit new to us. I mean, this is only the 3rd live action series. And then what did you think also of kind of seeing the time fugitive abduct C-20, just this kind of entire scene?
I mean, the cold open has become such a staple in television over the last years that it's always welcome in my book. I love just a little taste of what we're going to get. And then, you always get that little cliffhanger for the rest of the episode, and then it makes that title sequence really punch, and it almost gets you a bit more amped for the episode than just starting with the title sequence and then starting the show sort of does.
Yeah, and we haven't even talked about the title sequence, having the sort of different characters show up. This episode we're gonna start talking about different variants of Loki, and I think that's really what that title sequence is supposed to encompass. And you do see one with small horns and things like that. So
I talked about it. I talked about it in the last episode as well, right? Like it has that sort of sort of crime vibe to it, right? Even though it's flipping through, it's that black and white, it's very gritty,
and it's almost like the kind of clock you'd see at like a factory where it's like the rolling numbers flipping over.
Yeah. Or what it reminded me of was like airports, like when they have like the flippy thing that shows the different locations.
That's
what I said last week.
Exactly.
No, it's an original thought that I had, Justin. But you know what?
I'm like, we literally recorded that episode like 2 days ago, so it's like it's
Justin,
there.
Listen, I get it. Great minds, But no, I did enjoy seeing how easy it was for the we're just going to say the fugitive for now to take out the Minutemen. And I mean, clearly they've done this so many times that it's almost just like laughable at this time. And then all to the tune of Bonnie Tyler's Holding Up for a Hero, which I thought was perfect. And Sasha Lane, who plays C-20, just a quick shout out. She plays Jessica Hyde in the now sadly canceled Amazon series Utopia.
Sadly is a strong word.
No, it is sad. Kevin, that show is good.
It was for the first 2 episodes. Let's not even talk about that, because if this goes in that trajectory, we're all going to be canceling our Disney Plus subscriptions in 6 weeks.
I think at the very least, I think Sasha Lane was really intriguing in that show, and I hope we get a little bit more of her in this series as well. But we'll have to wait and see. But okay, guys, let's continue here. We cut back to see Loki reading from a jet ski magazine while studying the history of the TVA with Miss Minutes. Then, as he playfully tries to smack her with the rolled-up magazine, Mobius approaches him and informs him that there's been another attack while handing him a new jacket that labels him as Variant. During the debrief, Hunter B-15 informs the group that they've gathered enough temporal aura to determine that the fugitive is based on our Loki variant, but which kind of Loki remains unknown. The lesser kind, to be clear, as Loki quips. As they cycle through the different variations, Mobius says the TVA has pruned more Lokis than any other variant. After a quick correction on the topic of illusion projection from Loki, Mobius explains that if they go in as two teams bringing Loki along, it'll help them find the variant faster. Loki poses the question of betrayal, and Mobius shuts him down, asking him how's that going to get him an audience with the Timekeepers. After coming through the time door into the 1985 Renaissance Fair, they investigate the tent and learn that everyone in C-20's crew had been murdered, except she was taken hostage by the Time Fugitive. After Loki fails to gain more security in their agreement, the TVA sets a reset charge and restores the timeline. Whew. Okay, so guys, what did you think of the different Loki variants, the fact that the TVA has pruned more Lokis than any other variant, and Loki's failed attempt to gain more assurance from Mobius? Justin.
I feel like the various Loki variants just means that this is what Loki is meant to do, is to be this person, right? And I think that's what Mobius kind of hints at in the first episode, and we kind of now have more of an understanding of that like this is in Loki's nature to do this. But they've always caught them. This one is this one's being a little bit different, right? Mm-hmm. So, they've never thought of maybe pulling in a Loki to kind of learn from. So I think that's like really cool that we established that the various versions of Loki, they're doing the same thing. They've cheated their way and leaped through time. So it's a fun sort of continuity to create through that character and the variations of him.
I love that because that kind of instantly helps to, I was saying in our previous episode that Hunter B-15, I thought that, her sort of, she's really nervous of working with Loki. She doesn't like Loki at all. And this really helps to understand that more. She's obviously hunted a ton of Lokis before.
Or she's been a part of
and
it,
just, shouting out some of those Lokis. We got a Tour de France Loki, right? The Hulk Loki was incredible. Like, I'm sure those are all some sort of reference to different versions of Loki in the comics. But no, I mean, Kevin, what did you think of all those different Lokis?
Oh, yeah, that was a fun little glimpse. And it really does help to sort of, help us understand, like, it's a good sort of laying the groundwork for, things to come in the episode so that they make more sense for the viewer. And it's just that much more easy to identify what's going on when we sort of get our way to the end of the episode. So it was a smart way to do it, but there were some tantalizing options there that, I almost wish we could have seen. So it's interesting.
But they're all pruned. Justin.
I also think it was really interesting to continue this. What are these like sort of time resets? What do they look like, right? Like we've seen them being set, and at the end we saw the fugitive variant steal a whole bunch of them and disappear and burn a field. So, to see that in action, to see what it actually does.
Right, where it sort of spreads out and...
Yeah, it helps establish, again, as Kevin says, for things that will come later in the episode, but it gives, why was this fugitive variant stealing all of these, and to see what it does now and how it resets timelines. It's an interesting sort of thing. So it just helps setting that up so that payoff will be a lot better at the end.
And I loved Loki's reaction when Mobius mentions that Lokis are the most pruned variant. Like the amount of mental compartmentalization that this guy must be having to do is wild. Like we talked about how he had a long day in the first episode, and now he's hearing that every version of him that's ever existed has been pruned for the most part, or a lot of them have. And I also think the fact that Loki wasn't able to trick Mobius this time around in the tent, I think he's kind of losing his edge, but it's for a good reason, right? Their bond is getting stronger. Mobius is able to discern when Loki is being honest or not, a little bit more. And I think that's really good for their characters.
Yeah, two great call out moments for that is when he corrects Mobius and Mobius looks at him and says, "Okay, take a breath."
Yeah. You do that
sorry.
to me all the time.
Yeah, I do that. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Take a breath. And
Yeah.
then the other one was when he Loki's trying to get him, and he just pauses, and there's that long pause, and he's like, he's tricking us, right? Like he clued
Yeah.
in. So I thought those were some great tactics there to
So
kind
good.
of show the strength of the character.
I mean, we can't ever underestimate Loki. Maybe he's just lulling him into a false sense of security,
Ooh.
He's getting him on his side so that when the moment strikes, he can take advantage. Who knows?
Yeah, interesting. We'll have definitely more to say about that. Well, listen, let's keep going here. In the next scene, we see Mobius sitting in Ravona's office as she continues to doubt his choices to trust Loki, calling him an evil, lying scourge. She mentions that the timekeepers are monitoring every aspect of this case and that they have never been more involved, stating that they want this variant caught. Once he exits, Loki instantly attempts to explain his actions at the Renaissance Fair, and Mobius brushes him off and tries to explain to Loki that he thought Loki's incessant need for validation would motivate him to find the fugitive, but apparently he was wrong. He asks Loki in a final attempt to work with him to study case files until they can find a breakthrough. After requesting to read whatever files he was authorized to read, which were only his own, he discovers an event inquiry and breaks down as he reads of the destruction of Asgard and most of its people. But this does lead him to a hunch that he explains while ruining Mobius's lunch that the fugitive is hiding in the apocalypse on the sacred timeline, or different apocalypses. They travel back to 79 AD to Pompeii, Italy, just before the volcano erupts to test the theory, and they discover that Loki is absolutely right. Nothing he does, including releasing some goats and telling all the locals in Italian that they're about to die, none of that causes any branches in the timeline at all. So, guys, what did you think of going over this entire scene here? Ravona's distrust of Loki, Loki's reaction to the destruction of Asgard, and the discovery made in Pompeii.
Well, I think first, Ravona, she's going to have doubts. He's a variant. And if there's a history of Loki's, it goes without saying that she's probably a little bit hesitant. The whole Asgardian salad thing was fantastic.
Yeah.
I thought just how we got to that theory based on all of that. Go ahead.
I mean, wasn't that the smallest salad you've ever seen, though? That was his lunch? That's a side salad. Come on.
Yeah, it's a side salad, but
maybe they don't eat a lot in the TVA.
There we go.
Yeah, but I thought it was really funny, though, just the back and forth. He's explaining this theory with really muddled sort of analogy, and Mobius is just kind of like, I want that salad. That's my lunch, right? And then at the end of it, he's just like, what am I looking at here? Right?
Yeah,
he just doesn't understand.
Well, and even Loki then, that was kind of a weak analogy. My apologies.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
When he gets up and he walks over to Casey and picks up the juice box, and Casey's like, you! And then he just steals his juice box and pours it in there. It was such a good moment. Seeing him cry in discovering the destruction of Asgard, it kind of made me realize, this guy does have a heart. He actually cares about the death of all those people and of his home. And so I just thought it was another great touching moment. And again, Tom Hiddleston's acting there was fantastic.
Well, I mean, he's not actually a monster. He's a prick, and he wants to rule. That's just in his nature. But he was devastated by the loss of his mother and his father, and he was touched by the rekindling with his brother, and then shocked and appalled by his own death. And now here again, he's getting this overwhelming news. The guy has a heart and or a soul, if you will. And we already saw that. So. Again, it's nice though to see him almost humanized in those moments, and he acts that Tom Hiddleston just performs them so well.
Yeah, remember last episode he said it best. His illusion is driven by his own weakness, and that's kind of it. He has his own sort of issues, if you will, that he portrays through sort of a mask that allows him to be the villain or be perceived as the villain. But I don't think that that's the case, and I think that through the MCU they've established that. But that being said, Tom Hiddleston having an emotional reaction that looked very genuinely for the first time, even though he was in the movie. You know what I mean? It felt very authentic, right? So,
and I love the different ancillary characters that are around him that, they sort of work to prove just how well written Loki is, because, he's constantly saying they're hunting the lesser Loki, or when the lady in the library shushes him and he shushes her back, like he always has to get in the final word, like he can't just let it go.
I think it's also really interesting the sort of the architecture that they're surrounded by. We're a very traditional library. Like even when they zoom in on the keyboard that the receptionist is on, it's an old school chunky 80s computer, which is very in right now for Twitch streamers like Nate. And
hey, I've already ordered one,
Yeah, I figured.
Yeah.
And then, just the idea that paper, like things are written down, things are documented in a very, you would think that if this is the future, because even in the Pompeii scene, he's like, we're from the future. It feels like the future, right? Like it does, but it's not at the same time. It doesn't look like the future, but it is very futuristic. So it's it's interesting that he has that same sort of complex with the TVA like we kind of do.
Well, and then so you mentioned Pompeii, and so this is what I've been dying for from this show, is to get into these, scenarios where they have a chance to interact with historical events. And when we were listening to the press conference, the writer said that was one of the biggest challenges and one of the most enjoyable parts was trying to pick moments in time that they could sort of visit without being too obvious, to nail on the, hammer on the head of the nail sort of thing. And so, I'm a big history guy. And so to go and see the actual explosion of Mount Pompeii was really exciting.
Yeah, and I mean, you said he specifically used the word moments, so maybe we're going to be getting more.
Well, I mean, they did the DB Cooper,
yes.
So they played with that in the first episode. Even if there's just one moment an episode, because I mean, we're going to be chasing the fugitive, I think,
for quite some time.
Let's hope.
Yeah, and I love the dark humor, right? Like, from one of the writers of Rick and Morty, I expect this kind of dark humor.
This was Shakespearean Rick and Morty, essentially.
Yes.
This scene, it was basically like what Rick would do to test a theory,
Yeah, but seeing him release the goats and him being like, he's like, he called them his horned friends. I just was like, awesome callback to the helmet. And then just shouting at the villagers, right? Just being like, they're all going to die and nothing matters. Woohoo! Like, I was just like, this is so dark, but also so fantastic at the same time. I loved it. Very
Again,
cool.
though, it's super interesting, though, that they figured out just a new thing to do with the whole time travel thing, that someone could potentially hide within, a natural disaster of an apocalypse that,
It actually makes sense.
It does make sense. It does make sense because nothing would be of difference because the apocalypse is still happening. This event is still happening. So
no matter what.
Yeah. So it seems
Very
interesting.
Cool. Sweet. Well, listen, once they're back, Mobius and Loki realize they need to figure out all the different doomsday events that occurred naturally, specifically, over the course of history. After hours of studying, they take a short break and grab something to eat. Loki asks about Mobius's love of jet skis, and he explains that in the early 1990s, for a brief shining moment, there was a beautiful union of form and function, which we call the jet ski, and explains that even though he's never rode on one, that it reminds him of what he's fighting for. Loki asks Mobius if he actually believes all this stuff about the sacred timeline, and Mobius shares the parallels of Loki's mythical life and the ridiculousness of the TVA, and that all life is just chaos. Loki remarks how Mobius called him a scared little boy, and this brings Mobius back to the gum he'd received from the scared little boy he met in the cathedral in episode 1, which allows him to determine that Kablooey was sold in Haven Hills, Alabama in 2050, and that the fugitive is hiding there during a hurricane. Mobius requests to take a task force from Ravonna, and she reluctantly allows it. So guys, what did you think of Loki and Mobius's conversation here? And do you love yourself a good jet ski, Kevin?
A few years back, I was on a cruise and did some jet skiing in the open ocean.
Yeah,
and it is a horrifying experience. Let me tell you, ripping over the open waters at 50 miles an hour. You couldn't hear it because of the engine, but I was basically going the whole time. So I'm not. I get the adrenaline. I just feel bad for these TVA people that they don't. actually get to enjoy any
Enjoy
real
that
aspects
stuff.
of life.
Yeah.
That's such
Yeah.
a sad
It
existence.
seems like
if you ask me.
that would be like a TVA perk. So like if you're devoted to the TVA, you can go and have like a little, fun in the 1990s.
Yeah.
It's monitored and whatnot, and
Like,
ride
yeah,
your
you
ski
monitor
and come
your
back.
time.
It doesn't
Yeah,
affect the
go until
timeline.
the-
Exactly.
Well, I mean, look at Ravonna, right? She's kind of keeping all these like trophies in her office, and she gets to do that. That's her version of fun, right? So I really hope at some point we do get to see a Loki, and he looks over at Mobius, and there's just some jet skis, and they're just like, let's do it, and they get on some jet skis and go for a rip. Like, please make that happen. But honestly, this had to be I think this was my favorite moment in the episode. Hearing him discuss jet skis, like, to your point, Kevin, as a reminder of what he's fighting for, like, I think it's the fact that they're traveling through time so much, and so much has shifted. Everything's sort of simplified for them, right? Their goals and their aspirations, there's so much complexity in their lives, so they just long for simpler things, and specifically riding a jet ski in Mobius's case. And I also loved hearing Loki try to claim that the reality that Mobius believes in is ridiculous when he comes from Asgard and is the son of a frost giant raised by the god Odin. Like, it's all chaos, right? And so I loved seeing this very sort of centered character in Mobius bringing this extraordinary character like Loki down to our level. And so, I have to shout out the writing here, because all of it really made a lot of sense, and it was very philosophical, but it still felt accessible at the same time, which I think this show is doing it in spades, honestly.
And it has an air of fun to it. At the same time, there's a real seriousness about what they're talking about, but they're doing it in such a way that it's enjoyable and fun to watch, and that's the whole key to this show.
Very cool.
Yeah, I agree. I think the philosophical conversation, you nailed it, Nate. Like it allows for Loki to start to realize, like, to come down to some more of like a centered part where Mobius is, and how Mobius, like, he's seen so much of probably so many different timelines, and for him to fixate on the jet ski from the 1990s and to almost idolize it and put it in this sort of like echelon of perfection because of its form and function. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think you're right. Like, I think they see so much, and they've realized the chaos that everything just comes into this. For him, it comes into this like perfect functionality, and this perfect piece of hardware just represents everything. So that
I'm sure there's a TVA agent that loves teapots, right? I'm sure there's a TVA agent out there that loves the click of a keyboard, like stuff like that are just stuff that they long for, those simple things. But yeah, man, very cool. All right, let's keep going here. We're making some good time. During the briefing, it's explained that the fugitive is likely hiding inside of a warehouse owned by Roxcart. Hunter B-15 explains that they need to be on high alert, and that once they've entered through some time doors, that they'll need to look out for another Loki. Once they get through there, they're in 2050. They enter the Roxcart warehouse, and Hunter B-15 denies Mobius's request to have Loki travel with him, instead bringing Loki along with her. Meanwhile, this is all being watched by the time fugitive, who has set a timer for some reason. While walking with B-15, they stumble upon someone who's shopping for plants because it's a hurricane sale and azaleas are half off, which was amazing. Upon approaching the individual, he grabs B-15's arm, and a green energy surges through him into her as she is now possessed by the time fugitive. While searching through the stockrooms of the warehouse, Mobius and his group discover a large group of civilians hiding from the storm. They find Hunter C-20, and she's clearly still affected by the magic used on her, and she just keeps uttering, "It's real," and that she also lets them know she gave away the location of the timekeepers. So, guys, before we continue, what do you think of Loki's first interaction with, well, I guess we can say Loki at this point. And what do you think of the implications of C-20 revealing the location of the timekeepers?
Well, obviously, that's the fugitive's goal. Now we sort of have an end game in their master plan. We don't know really what they're doing quite yet or how they're going to do it, but we now sort of have that sort of plot to our whole show, I guess, is going to be this fugitive trying to do something with the timekeepers, and so that was a pretty big reveal plot wise.
Yeah.
Right.
I also think the why, right? Like that's going to be the real interesting part to unravel is why is there such a disdain for the timekeepers, right? So, but yeah, the whole part with the agent that was kind of spewing that sort of rambliness. I'm interested to see where that goes and how that kind of like translates. She was obviously, to your point, still feeling the effects of the magic, but the more interesting part was the interaction between Loki and Loki.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, looking at him like do the smile back, like when the enchanted B-15 was sort of just, she did that smile, and then Loki does his smile, and it was just so perfectly like aligned. And then there's this one moment in the episode where he's like, "Oh, now I understand why Thor finds us so annoying." Like I was just like, awesome, like cool. Let's keep bringing Loki back. Like the fact that he's already here and he's realizing this stuff, and we're only 2 episodes away from him being, "I am Loki," and like it's just so well done, and I believe it all, and it's hilarious. I loved seeing him interact with himself. But let's get back to it here. So Loki slowly walking with the enchanted B-15. The fugitive transfers from B-15 to Randy. And Loki continues to recognize, again, how annoying it is for him to talk to himself. After revealing to the fugitive that he's gone undercover, he asks them to join him, and together they can take down the TVA and overthrow the timekeepers. To which, after about 8 to 10 seconds of consideration, the fugitive denies the offer and then transfers yet again into a large man who attacks Loki. And after a brief battle, the time fugitive reveals themselves to be a female Loki. Who would have guessed? The timer goes off, activating hundreds of reset charges that start dropping through hundreds of small time doors into different points all across history, causing a ton of Nexus events, leading to a disastrous amounts of branching timelines off the sacred timeline. The TVA responds and sends in a ton of Minutemen, and we see Lady Loki walk through a time door. And despite Mobius calling out to say, "Wait!" Loki follows her through, and the episode ends. So, I mean, this is really what we were all just waiting to talk about. I need your reactions here. Who is Lady Loki really? And, what do you think her plan really is to send these reset charges across the sacred timeline?
I'm not really well versed in that. We would need our resident experts on the matter, but I can't discuss things with him quite yet. Obviously I don't want to spoil anything for him, so I'll have to wait to sort of get his take on all of that. I mean, I'll just really quickly go back before we sort of break that down. You had mentioned the interaction with Loki and Loki with B-15, but I thought the Randy interaction was really, really spectacular. That was sort of the highlight of that sequence for me, and I just thought they had so much fun sort of passing off, the Loki character into these different people. And like, what a fun opportunity for those actors to get to try and channel Tom Hiddleston. You know what I mean? Like that would be like such a fun script to sort of chew into. So I'm sure they had a blast doing that.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool.
Yeah. I think that, the actors that they casted to play the enchanted versions of the Lokis, I thought that they were great. Yeah, Randy was probably the highlight actually of that batch. As for where these things are going, I that's the big mystery. Like they really, again, they left this on a cliffhanger that I'm like hooked to see what's going to happen. And then you see the sort of cascading effect when we go back to the TVA and see those branches just happening off of the main timeline. And it's like, oh, that can't be good.
No.
Well, yeah, sure. I'm wondering if that isn't just an enormous sort of distraction or diversion that the TVA is going to have to address before they could possibly chase the fugitive, Lady Loki, now that we know.
It just bought her some time.
Exactly, right?
I mean,
no
there you go.
Yeah,
no pun intended. Literally not intended. But no. But I love that because that, you look at, we looked at the Infinity Stones being used as little sort of paperweights in the previous episode. And so even this, we're watching this moment unfold. And in our minds, it's like, oh, this is insane. This is crazy. This is going to change everything. And probably to her, she's probably just like, great, that'll just knock them back, a little bit of time. And that way I can go and get these timekeepers.
you're right. Like, it could just be a plot element to advance the narrative forward so that, she buys herself more time so she can track down these timekeepers. I think, though, the next episode, at least, I feel like it's going to be a cat and mouse sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I feel like maybe in this process, there might be some understanding. So
yeah,
I don't know. I feel like the reason why he jumped through that is that he needed to know more.
100%.
He needs to know more.
Well,
yeah.
he's very intrigued, right? Like this woman just caused more chaos than he ever has in his entire life, and she did it, in a matter of moments. But I do love, like, when she takes her hood down and she just looks at him, and in a show called Loki, she goes, "This isn't about you." Like,
yeah.
it's just so perfect. And yeah, I think you're right, Justin. I think we're going to see her be a little bit more of a friend than a foe by the end of the series. And I think this is just kind of the beginning, and we'll end up maybe liking her, or, Lady Loki, or maybe she'll just call herself Randy from now on. I don't know.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see. That's definitely the cliffhanger for this episode to learn more.
I also wanted to just shout out the credits. You actually do see her now in the credits, and a picture of her, where we didn't see her before. And I also wanted to shout out, I don't know if this was in the first episode, but we were talking so lovingly and longingly about the music in this series. And Natalie Holt's name comes up, and when it does, you see a metronome on the screen. And I'm just like, that's such a great nod to both her role in the production and time at the same time. I don't know. I dug it. There's so much to, like, sort of gobble up in those end credits that I haven't watched a YouTube video yet for it, but I'm going to.
Oh yeah, I'm sure there's a lot to dissect. And I just, for anybody still complaining that the end credit sequences are so long, they simply don't understand how all of this is working. It's not taking away time from the actual show. Disney Plus can make an episode as long as they want. So they've made their episode the length that they want it, and then this is the length that the credits simply need to be to fit in the amount of credit that they need to give the enormous staff that goes behind these television shows. Yeah,
because they're movies. They're productions of movies.
Exactly. And they're doing something during those to give you little maybe Easter eggs, to give you sort of nods to things that are happening or might happen, or, they're at least interesting at the same time as they are, obviously giving their due credit. But again, for anybody listening who thinks that, well, if the credits weren't so long, the show could be longer, I keep reading it everywhere. I read it for WandaVision and Falcon and all these things, and it's just like, enough, people, enough.
Well, listen, let's give our credits to this episode with our final rating, and then we'll get to our mid-credit scene where we'll talk about what might be next. But guys, I want to hear your final thoughts, as well as your final score, which we're going to be ranking on a scale of 1 to 5 azalea plants on sale. So Justin, let's start with yourself.
Yeah, I love the episode. I think it leaves you with a great sort of cliffhanger. The deepening of the buddy cop relationship between Loki and Mobius was great. Really nice dialogue moments. And all just sort of situated around, like, sort of a cat and mouse chase, if you will. I felt very traditional crime film. But the cliffhanger definitely leaves me wanting more. And for that, I'll give it a 4.5 out of 5.
Kevin, how about yourself?
I think the strongest aspect of this episode was that sort of buddy cop relationship and the strengthening of the friendship and the growing of the understanding between Loki and Mobius, and some of the dialogue was just so wonderfully Marvel and funny, while also being informative. And it's just, while the show is very non-formulaic, it does still follow that Marvel formula of what has worked for them for so long. And so I really do hope that isn't the last we see of them sort of teaming up together to sort of solve a mystery or crack the case, if you will. I mean, I don't know. It felt to me like he was escaping. He was like, this is my chance to sort of get out of here and
him and Lady Loki are now going to have that. The relationship, right? So, going forward.
But not I mean, another thing I really liked from the episode was, again, going to Pompeii. I really hope we do get to go to a few more historical locations and events, throughout history over the course of the show, just because that's what I was really looking forward to in the show itself. So I think it was a really, really strong follow-up. Justin, you nailed it. The biggest takeaway from this episode was that sort of reveal of who the fugitive was at the end, and and it did such a great job of like, oh, now I need episode 3 really, really bad. And so I think it was another really, really successful episode, a really strong follow-up to the first one. And now my score is going to be a little lower than my score for the first episode. But I don't want that to suggest that I didn't think the episode was great or even as good as the first one. I think my score for the first one was coming off of a lot of adrenaline. It was exciting to get this show that we'd been waiting for and all the circumstances. So, but honestly, this was a really solid episode that I'm going to give 4.75 out of 5 azalea plants on sale.
There you go. Very cool. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with all of that. It was such a great second episode. Again, the first one had a lot of emphasis on exposition to catch us up and Loki up. But now, honestly, the show is starting to show its identity, I think, with themes of crime drama. I think we're still going to get more of that as we explore Mobius's character, even if it is maybe with Loki physically in the room. And it blends action and slower dialogue scenes really well. I loved the countless quips from Loki defending his ego throughout the entire episode, and the reveal at the end was great. Not only seeing a female Loki after they, like, throughout the entire episode, they kept saying him and he when they were referring to the fugitive. So kind of gave it away a little bit, but I don't know. The cliffhanger sort of universe-changing plot twist that we've already gotten 2 episodes in. I'm just really excited to see where they take it, and I hope they keep the momentum going and really emphasize kind of the scope of what this series can do and these characters can do for the MCU as a whole. You know, I think we talked about WandaVision and we talked about Falcon and Winter Soldier, and really how much impact will they have, with WandaVision maybe having a little more, Falcon and Winter Soldier maybe having a little bit of less of an impact. But this kind of has an entire universe impact potentially. So I didn't quite enjoy. I don't think it nailed everything that we talked about as much as the first episode did. I mean, I guess I just like more dialogue than action, and so some of the action moments in the episode did feel a little bit weak. So I'm going to give this episode 4.5 out of 5 azalea plants on sale. So on Watch Club, we like to end by giving our thoughts on what we might see in the next episode or in the series overall. So after a week of waiting, we finally get to share our low-key perspective on what's going to happen next. So Kevin, can you give me your low-key perspective, my guy?
Okay, well, as everyone who's been following our Watch Clubs knows, I'm not great with the predictions. But I don't know. I just keep having this dreadful feeling that Loki's not going to be this sort of good guy or anti-hero that we thought he was going to be. That was sort of the setup in the first 2 episodes. And the only reason I say that is, and again, I don't like to pay too much attention to trailers. Obviously, there's not like a clips from the next episode, but I've seen enough stills to sort of see things that, you know, I was wondering when we would see them in the show, and we didn't see them in these first 2 episodes. And there's just a couple shots of Loki back with his big horns on. He looks like he's almost leading a group of soldiers of some sort in the one image that I'm thinking of specifically. And that just feels like old school, trying to take over bad guy Loki. And so I just have this terrible feeling that our buddy cop sort of relationship might not play through the whole show as much as I wanted to. And so I hope that in terms of this prediction, I am dead wrong.
I hope so too. Like I do want to see them interact again, but I mean, maybe they built up this friendship, to your point, Kevin, to tear it down, and to kind of cause that sort of descent through those characters.
So Ravonna can say, "I told you not to trust him." You know?
Right? Exactly. Right. And then you've got that play off that. Justin, what is your low key perspective?
Yeah, I think that, you know, we're not going to have the 2 of them together for the next couple episodes, but they'll get back together. I think the reason why he jumped through that portal was to learn more. He wasn't going to learn more if he stayed with Mobius. So he said, I'm going to just find out what's going on. And I think at least the next episode or the episode after will be even more of a cat and mouse, but just between the 2 Lokis, and maybe he'll learn a little bit more. They've only really kind of begun the sort of buddy cop relationship in these first 2 episodes, or a friendship. So there's, in my opinion, to tear it down, as you said, Nate. I don't think that there's enough there to actually do that. But I do think that Mobius is going to have to deal with the repercussions of the events of what just happened. Loki got away, and there's a Nexus event that's happened across multiple timelines. So it's like, they didn't get what they were looking for. They didn't get the variant, and they lost a variant. So it's going to be, Mobius is going to have to probably deal with
that. Yeah.
And I think what's going to happen is Loki will find himself back at TVA chasing down Lady Loki.
Cool. Okay. I have a low-key perspective, but it came from a very low-key place. It's kind of a blink and you missed it sort of thing. But I'm going to probably get a little high-key as I get stoked to talk about it. Did you guys happen to see the list of places that were affected by the reset charges? Did you guys catch any of those? Did you see them?
Not.
So Ravona's sitting in her office, right? And she sees the like all the different things pop up in terms of the different places that were being affected. And so, okay, let me go through this here. Vormir, which is where we last saw Natasha Romanoff give her life, right? So we've got a connection to Black Widow.
Yeah,
right,
and
which
also
is crazy.
The Soul Stone. That's where the Soul Stone is.
And the Soul Stone, right? We've got Sakaar, which showed up, which we know is where we are for a majority of Thor Ragnarok, right? And so that's where the Grand Master is from. So maybe there's a connection to somehow changing Ragnarok and Asgard. Again, I'm not sure if they're going to. They probably won't explain this all in one show, but there's got to be something going on. Ego, the living planet, is one of the things that's listed. Well, it just says Ego, but he's a Celestial. Is there a connection to the Eternals? Titan, where half of the Avengers fought Thanos, is listed. New York, of course, where the conflict in the Avengers happened, and we see that in the trailer. So obviously he's going to go to New York at some point. Tokyo, right, where we know Hawkeye lived in exile, and Xandar, which is a place that the Guardians of the Galaxy saved at least twice so far in the MCU. And so is there a connection to Guardians 3? Like, the big thing is, I'm just saying, these implications could have massive effects for what we've seen before. They could change anything up to this point. And honestly, I thought it would be really dumb to have Natasha Romanoff come back into the series, into the MCU. But now, if they get this guy to write how all this stuff comes back and works with Kevin Feige closely, because he's already doing Multiverse of Madness, I'm just saying, any single one of these things that I just listed could occur, and I'd probably be okay with it.
Well, yeah, and is Lady Loki perhaps working with a variant of Thanos to stop,
right?
All of the events? I don't know. I don't know if they really want to go back and revisit too much of the previous three phases, because then things can get really messy and a little contrived, and it sort of diminishes the impact of those events.
100%.
But for all of these events to be taking place in those familiar locations is very intriguing. I didn't even think to sort of try and pause and look and see if I could spot
maybe it's just for this series though, right? Because if their end goal of the TVA is to sort of fix all this stuff, maybe they still do end up fixing all this stuff. Maybe Loki still has to die. You know what I mean? Like, maybe he sacrifices himself as a hero, which is something I predicted when we were looking at the trailers. But I don't know. That's just my low key perspective.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one with the list of planets that they've, because Boromir, there was a Soul Stone. New York, there was a stone there. There's two stones there. Right. It's kind of similar to how they kind of figured out to time travel to the different parts, right? To kind of get everything. So. I'm not to say that the stones might have anything to do with it, but things have happened in those places. So, yeah, it's that'll be interesting to see if it does have any ramifications.
I do like that you called it Boromir.
Boromir.
One does not simply mess with time.
Lord of the Rings nerds out there, right? Vormir. I really hope that they, after establishing that the Infinity Stones don't really mean anything, I hope they keep that going. But I do hope that we get to maybe kind of go back to some of these moments, these epic moments of the MCU, and see some of these actors again. Well, we will have to see. And that's it for this episode. We hope you enjoyed this week's time-twisted episode of Watch Club. And if you did, make sure to subscribe to us wherever you like to listen to podcasts if you haven't already. Also, if you want to write into the show with your thoughts or your low-key perspective on what you think is going to happen. Is that the full title? Is that what it is? Let us know. Here's the thing. You don't have to drop reset charges through a series of time doors, thus bombing the sacred timeline, causing a copious amount of branches seemingly impossible to fix. Instead, Justin, can you let the listeners know where and when they can write into the show?
Well, as always, when is up to you. But where is wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. That's wearegeekcentric@gmail.com.
Awesome. Justin, can you say it all backwards now, please?
No.
I thought he would at least try. Also, if you don't know, we have more than just Watch Club. We have our regular episodes of the Geekcentric podcast. And while we're reviewing all this Loki, maybe go back and give some of our other episodes a listen. Like, for instance, our Bad Batches Fake or Real episode where I made up some Marvel characters and also named some that were real. And all of you guys, well, I won't spoil it, but go back and listen to it. Or I loved our fanfare episode where Justin and I go ear to ear to match the studio to their opening fanfare. Kevin hosted that one. I just thought it was such a great idea. So go give those a listen and a nice 5-star rating because you are burdened with glorious purpose. Oh, and speaking of Bad Batches, if you want to join some batches, Justin, Darcy, and I, for another Watch Club, we've got our Star Wars The Bad Batch going up every single week as well. So it's so much fun doing that, and we hope that you can kind of come on over and enjoy everything that Geekcentric has to offer. Justin, Kevin, thank you so much for joining me for today's Nexus event-filled Watch Club. And as we say,
For all time.
always.